Hi everyone. Today I'm going to tell you about why you should be taking an NPTEL online course. So how I'll be going about this is I'll touch upon various aspects of why I took NPTEL, and hopefully that helps you also decide whether you want to do an NPTEL course and whether you want to explore the entire gamut of courses that are there on the NPTEL website. So let's get started. So I've labeled this as why you should learn lifelong and do it through NPTEL. Uh, Very nice words, but let's see what I actually mean. So I'm going to break down my review into four different parts, and I'll touch each of them here. First, I'll look into why you should always learn and not stop learning as you used to do before. Why online learning is one of the best methods for learning. I strongly believe that it's a more effective medium than most other methods of learning that are there, like books or classrooms. So this is something that I'll touch upon. Third, I'll come to why NPTEL. When it comes to online learning, there are various available forums for you, various options that you have. Why NPTEL stands out among them is what I'll tell you about, and I think I've done a fair number of courses, so I can speak for a fair bit on that. Then last, I'll come to one of the most important points, which will also touch upon why you should be learning, and that is what to learn. And that I'll explain based upon why you're learning. I'll try to correlate the two. Okay, so the first thing we'll be touching upon right now is why learning always. Now, it's important to note that learning and education are fairly different, right? What does learning mean? Learning means that which you are interested in and then imbibe in yourself. Education is a formal process for this. Now, the two need not be this exactly the same thing, though for too many people, learning means the exact same thing as formal education. Now, what typically happens is that a lot of us are put into courses that we may or may not have really liked and chosen in our 10th and 12th class. So fairly often what happens is that we get certain marks which are controlled by so many factors that are not under our control, and based upon that we get put into some course or some medium. Now, is that what we'll always do in life? Not necessarily, right? Like at that age, you're not really able to discern what you want to do in life. It's too long of a process to actually predict. Therefore, should you stop learning? I do not think so. You should always be learning, and that learning doesn't have to stop with formal education, which is your degrees in your 10th and 12th and BTech and maybe also MTech. Right? So I'll touch upon why you should do it in terms of three very macro factors. One is I'll try to look at it from a mathematical perspective. I'm going to bring in something called the Pareto curve. The second thing that I'll touch about is achieving scale. Scale is a word that we hear a lot these days, mainly in terms of all these online companies. But I'll tell you how scale is achievable right from history. It's not some term that was born today. It's achieved right from history, and it can be achieved even at a personal level. And the third thing I'll touch is the advances in medicine to which society has not yet caught up. You have to really believe that you're going to live long, and based on that your actions would change, and I'll touch upon that for a fair bit right now. Okay, so the first point we'll be covering right now is the mathematics behind why you should be learning always. One of the concepts that I want to speak about is the Pareto curve. Now, Pareto curve is applicable across various systems, and you might have come across it before. So bear with me if you already know all of this. So the first thing that Pareto actually said originally was that 80% of wealth is concentrated with 20% of the people. Now, some studies, including in Chicago Booth, have extended this argument further, and they did some studies as recent as 2015 based on national statistics, and they found that 80% of wealth is distributed to 20% of people. That's like the Pareto statistic. But further, more importantly, 22% of wealth is concentrated with just 1% of the population. Now, even more surprisingly, 5% of all the wealth is concentrated with the top 0.01% of the population. Now, what does that mean for an individual who is at this bracket or this bracket or this bracket? What does that mean? So, if let's look at if a person is in the top 1% of the 20% of the population, is about earning 4 rupees. You can scale it up to 4,000 or 4 lakh or whatever. Now, if you're in the top 1% of people, you're then earning 22 rupees. Now that again can be scaled up by the same factor. And if you're in the top 0.01% of the population, you're suddenly at 500. So look at the non-linear change over here. Now, why is this relevant to you? Now, this is relevant because of two reasons, right? You want to keep moving up this. Everyone ideally should want to do that, but not many understand the significance of small changes in life. If you study for a small bit and can go from, let's say, 20% to 10%, your growth is going to be inordinately high. Like that one thing that you learn extra could put you in a much higher bracket. That's what I want to say. Now, we also note that education is the one thing that helps you jump brackets quite easily. Earlier, it was not always the case that, a poor person might end up being the CEO of a company, or people from humble backgrounds or rural backgrounds could easily be in very high posts. But today all of that is possible, and one of the main driving factors behind that is education. Of course, the biggest factor is formal education system, but you would find that a lot of people are recognizing online education also. And if you have already gone through that formal education system, what option do you have? Like, online education is the best means for you to show that you're interested in a field, and you should keep trying to do that marginal little bit to get that inordinate marginal gain. Right, so this is what I wanted to speak about firstly. Okay, so the second thing that I wanted to talk to you about is scale. So we've looked at how some of the mathematics of Pareto tells you why you should always be learning. Now let's look at how scale tells you the same thing. Now, scale is something that we hear in the context of technology companies a lot these days, but scale has always existed. Let's look at in history how societies have created scale, right? First, there was only artisans who was working individually, but now, right from history, we have always created groups of people who are scaling. So first, you could make others work either through kingdoms or through slavery, or even through companies. Now, companies, you enable a group of people to work towards a common goal. But the real achievement in scale actually came when you started having machines that started doing physical work. Post that, we unfortunately in India missed this whole section. But fortunately, there were two other stages that we are very much a part of. So first is make machines do others thinking work. Now, what are the sort of machines that do this? Of course, computers, all of us know and use, and we have computers in our hands every day, like through our mobile phones. But can you actually make a mobile phone work? So this is achieving scale, right? Of course, in terms of society, each of these has enabled society to become much more productive. But what does this mean to us individuals? Now, one mantra that I have always had is that become the scaler and not the scaly. You help others achieve scale, of course, but in the process, can you also scale yourself? Make the most of who you are. Create some leverage for yourself in terms of your impact in the world. Now, how can you achieve scale for yourself? So let's look at the most obvious way is to lead others, which is to say that for some reason, they really respect you and they would do what you are saying. So that is the first form of scale that we look at, and education comes in there because to enable you to lead others, of course, you can be a politician and lead, but in technical fields, if you want to lead others, you should know the entirety of your subject. So leading others requires education, in my opinion. The second method is that you create systems that help others. Now, there's a next level of scale where you're not just directly leading people, you're creating systems so that others can be led by others. So let's say that you're a manager in a company and you're creating systems for employees to work, and they'll themselves have their team leaders and things like that. So you're at the next level of scale where you're creating systems. Now, why does this require education? Because to get to this level, people at the below level should respect you. At least in corporate environments, I found this. Like in societal environments, your leadership skill is much more valuable, but in corporate environments, your ability to create systems becomes quite important. Now, how can you create systems? You can create systems by understanding the entirety of it. Now, to understand the entirety, education is fairly important, at least in that particular domain. Now, of course, like the next level of scale onwards, then you're really talking technical, right? You're creating or running machines that make others make things that others want. So here you're running machines. So you are creating a machine that creates thousands of goods, or you are maintaining a machine that creates something that millions of people want. You could be creating a soap, you could be creating electricity, you could be creating absolutely anything that millions and crores of people are using. So that is one completely different level of scale. Now let's come to in terms of this what corresponds to the next level of scale, is that you start creating programs that help others who are creating the first three levels of scale. Now, why is this important? Because suddenly you are not responsible anymore for creating or running a machine or creating the system. You're creating a program that helps others who are creating those systems, right? So, in terms of this, really we can say that the best systems creator was Microsoft, because it has enabled so many people through Office or through Windows to become so much more productive. Now, that to me is like an extraordinary level of scale. Things beyond that even are what enables Microsoft itself to work. So that would be things like person who wrote the C program has created a program that enables others to create programs, or the person who wrote the first compiler, or the first person who wrote the first assembly code. These are all monumental things in our history which we often overlook. Of course, we can't get to those levels of scale. Most people operate in the first three, and all of the three, in my opinion, require a degree of understanding of your domain, and that's where technical education comes in. You could have learned a degree which you may have forgotten. You could have learned a degree in a slightly different domain than you're working right now. But in the domain you're working, if you want to achieve a level of understanding, a small online course might help you do that. So this is the second point that I wanted to state. Okay, the third thing that I'm going to speak to you about, and possibly the most important thing in terms of why you should always learn, is think very long term. Now you might be saying, why should I think very long term? I can't even tell about tomorrow. So actually studies in finance have shown us that the very short term and very long term are fairly predictable. The very long term because of trends, and very short term because you can directly project from the variables that you have. So ask yourself this question, as I have before, that how long do you expect to live? Is it 75, 80, 90? Now, depending on your answer, the way you look at your own life would change drastically, in my opinion. At least it happened so for me. Now, when I started asking myself this question, that if I'm living till 75, why should my education have stopped at 20? Earlier, when you used to have these, stages of life, and where people start working at 25, you possibly at these years had only 10 years of productivity, and therefore it is very important that you stop learning and start working. Whereas now, if you start having much longer lives, you have so much time to be productive, and you can also need not segregate the productive hours from the learning years. So you can do both together, and therefore the question arises, why not learn rather than why learn, especially when the resources are available to you. Now let's look at if you're in a particular field, you have to ask yourself, what was the world like 40 years back? And I can speak about society in general. There were no TVs. 1980 India, there was hardly cable television and all of that. No computers in India. Maybe they were there, ARPANET and all that in US. No mobile phones, no YouTube. Like, what was the world like? We can't even look back. At least I can't look back at that period and think about how the world would have been like. Now, someone educated in the 80s got all the latest of that age. Now, how relevant is that education today? It might not be so relevant, right? And those people also may not have had the means to upgrade their own education in whatever field they were in. Of course, you had journals and books, but today you have vast resources, and one of the resources for learning especially is online courses, and therefore online courses become fairly important to be at the forefront of your own field. And for me, one of the best methods of doing this is through NPTEL. Online courses are far better than, in my opinion, articles that you read online about your own field of study, or even reading books, because books might be slightly dated. Some of the courses tend to be fairly current. So these are all points that I have spoken about why you should always learn. Next, let's look at why an online education is a better learning than even books or other means. Now that we've looked at why one should always learn, let's look at why online learning might be the best one for you. Now, the points that I'll cover are mainly in these 3 points, which is what are the methods of learning? Let's understand them. And one of the important points of why online learning is pace of learning, right? Why is pace of learning important, or I believe the most important point is that all of us are different. We come with different backgrounds. When learning the same topic, since we are in different backgrounds, coming from different backgrounds, we may take slightly different amounts of time to learn the same thing, and we may need to do different amounts of background work to understand the particular concept. So this is something that I'll talk about, and of course the biggest advantage is that you get to learn from the best. So let's go through each of these points in much more detail. So I'll cover the different methods of learning here. There are 3 main methods of learning that different researchers have spoken about: visual, auditory, and experiential. And they actually say that experiential might be the best form of learning because it's multimode. You get to interact with the thing or concept that you're learning, and this is not possible, of course, for most of us, and therefore we are left with these 2 methods that most of us learn from. And books are, of course, a major way of visual learning. Now, what does books actually entail? Learning from books actually entail? You might have noticed that when you're reading a book, there is actually a voice in your head. At least it is for me. I'm not sure about you. There's a voice in my head that's reading it out. So what we're actually doing is to convert the visual to auditory, and then we learn. Now, what if that's given to us innately through someone speaking to us? Now, of course, that is the first form of that is classroom learning, which is very good. And the next form is videos. Now, is there something that's not possible in the classroom environment? Yes, of course. So that's the pace of learning that we'll speak about now. Now, what are the advantages of online learning, or how I go about my online learning is that I actually have an idea of how much I can take in at one point of time. A classroom might be 1 hour. Our concentration might not last for 1 hour. So you convert your video into bite-sized chunks, which is to say that, hey, you learn for 5 minutes, then get up, go for a walk, do whatever you want, come back, learn the next concept, and so on. So one of the things that I really liked is the ability to rewind as well. Now, what does the rewinding do? It means that if I'm lost somewhere, and this happens so often, it actually takes about 20 minutes to go through a 10-minute video, or half an hour to go through a 15-minute video, or 1 hour would take 2 hours. Why? Because we continuously lose our train of thoughts. This is how the brain works. When you're doing something, our concentration might wander. And online learning, if you are someone like that, online learning works really well for you. Why? Because you rewind back to the point at which you are concentrating, and then run it again through that. Maybe you're taking notes and therefore you want to pause. All of these things are possible. Now, going at your own pace, why is that important? That's important because everyone in a classroom is not the same. We have all had different experiences in terms of learning before we came to that classroom. We might know different amounts of different parts of the learning. For example, someone might be an expert at mathematics, someone might have learned an MBA before coming to a class, someone might have even studied, let's say, very good English before coming to a class, so they might be able to process the words better. But each of these people is good at a certain thing, doesn't mean they can go at the same pace. And what online learning actually helps us do is to, for each of the people, a different part is difficult, and therefore they can go and research some part of the background in whatever video that they are viewing. It might be the same video for all of the 3 kinds of people that I spoke about, and they'll go research different parts and come back to the video, pause at different points and come back to the video, and they continue learning, at the end of which they are possibly at the same level, and which is to say, having learned the concept. And this is possible through online, definitely not possible in classrooms, and definitely not in books. And this for me is the most important. I already touched about that you should not lose your thread of thought. Losing thread of thought is to say that you lose your concentration, start thinking something else. In a typical classroom, what happens is that most of us wander, and 5 minutes later, we are not able to follow what the professor is saying, and therefore our entire 1 hour session might go waste. That's not the case in online class. And this point is something that I wanted to specifically speak about for NPTEL, which is to say that you're learning from the best. Why is that important? Imagine you are living in the past and all of these facilities were available long back. And imagine having to learn mechanics from Newton, or if you're like a fan of philosophy, imagine learning philosophy from Kant, from his own words. Or for that matter, algorithms from Sedgwick, or physics from Balakrishnan sir. Except that the last two are possible. Now, it so turns out that we having resources to study online will be able to study algorithms from Sedgwick and physics from one of the best in India. And this is possible today, and we should be able to make the most of it. At least in my opinion, the best teachers are not those who know the most. Your book, in fact, knows the most. It covers absolutely everything, right? So the best teachers are those who convey best to you, which is to say they go sequentially and are able to take you from point A to point B in your learning path. And that is done through teachers, and therefore books may not be the best at it. The best teachers are very good at it. And it so turns out that NPTEL gives you access to that. It also tells you that there is no rationing of learning anymore. Earlier, if you wanted to listen to all these professors, you had to go to an IIT or IISc. That's not necessary anymore. Sitting in wherever you are sitting at, maybe through a mobile phone or through a computer or a laptop, you are able to access the absolute best that is there in India. And that to me is something beautiful that comes in through online learning. We'll go specifically to what NPTEL does, which is, in my opinion, better than some of the others. Okay, now that we've seen why you should always be learning and why online learning is very effective, let's look at why NPTEL might be the right option for you. There are three main points that I'd like to cover. First is that you're learning from India's best teachers. The second is that a large number of education resources are available free of cost. And third, and possibly most importantly for you, these certifications are recognized by institutes and companies that you might want to get into. Now let's look at the first point. Why do I say these are India's best teachers? The reason I say that is because institutes like IITs and IIScs have produced the best technologists of India. Now, if they have access to some resource that people outside do not have, then those were the teachers that were teaching at IITs and IIScs. Through NPTEL, you would also have access to the same kind of teacher, and this to me is a very big advantage of NPTEL. So, of course, in NPTEL itself, in the portal, you would find for a single topic multiple professors teaching the same topic if you go through the NPTEL archives. So find out what suits you best. Your wavelength should match with how the teacher is teaching. So once you find such a course, go through that course and you'll find your learning is very effective. The second thing that I want to speak about is that education resources are free. Now, of course, apart from the degree that you get at the end of it, the main resource that IITs and IIScs offer to you is the learning from the professors, learning by diffusion, or so to speak. So is this available only to those 40 students in class? No more, right? If you have access to a MOOC, you are able to have one professor teach thousands and hundreds of thousands and maybe even millions of students. And that is possible in NPTEL, that you have access to the best that the IIScs and IITs have to offer. And the last point that I want to speak about is that the certification is recognized by various companies. Now note that NPTEL has been launched fairly recently. The concept of MOOCs is fairly recent. And even if today the company that you work in does not recognize such a certification, note that in future it will become more and more relevant. Now, in this regard, I'd like to make a few points to those among you who are possibly recruiters. So there are various MOOCs available online. You might have come across them on the CVs of students, CVs of applicants to your company. Let me tell you this, having taken MOOCs from all the major providers, that NPTEL is by far the most rigorous of the lot. Why? in the other MOOCs I can get through without having learned the concept, and I don't think that's possible in NPTEL because there's an actual exam conducted with the full rigor of a public exam in India, and that means that someone who has completed an NPTEL course, say with a good grade, of course it's not just about passing it, right? Say with a good grade, then this you can say that the student knows the theory. For sure, the student at the least knows the theory of the subject. Now, the second point that is obvious to a recruiter when they see a person having completed a certification is that the person is good enough at that point to start experiential learning at your company, which is to say that any learning that is going to start contributing in some time, they're definitely good enough for that. Some of the students who have completed NPTEL courses may also be good enough to start contributing immediately. Now, where the person belongs to, whether they are good enough to start learning at your company or whether they are good enough to start contributing immediately, is something that you have to gauge based on the student. But I would like to say definitely that NPTEL is the most rigorous of all the online MOOCs, and therefore recruiting a person who has completed a particular course through NPTEL should be beneficial to your company in a particular domain. Now that we've covered why you should be learning online through NPTEL, let's look at what you should be learning. For me, the personal reason for learning quite often drives what you want to learn. We don't always have a choice in the things that we do in life, but it so turns out that online learning gives you an opportunity to make that choice. Therefore, making that choice of what you want to learn is fairly important. Now, let's look at some of the reasons that people might have to learn. Firstly, people might say that, hey, I was only 16 when I chose my degree, and therefore today I want something else, so let me do a career switch. Some other type of people might say that I'm an expert in my field, I work with others who are in slightly different fields, I want to learn more about their subject. Or I'm managing certain people who are working on slightly different areas, let me learn more about their subject to manage them better. The third is I want to improve my recruitability. Now, let's say that we think we might get better noticed by company XYZ based on certain certifications that we have. That is a fairly good reason to go for an online learning. Then there might be certain kinds of people who have very long-term goals in life, and learning definitely is a strong part of that process of a lifelong goal. And there are, of course, kinds of people who say, I just love learning and I want to do it for the heck of it or for more knowledge. It's like reading a book for them. So let's look at each of these and what courses such people might want to take. So for the first set of those who want to take up a different career path, this is probably the longest and most rigorous learning that they might have to undertake. In this case, I think there are a few steps in deciding which courses to take, and the first, of course, is you have to choose your alternative path. You know that what path you're in was wrong, but can you choose your alternative? And only once you choose your alternative, you should take up the rest of the steps. And if you have your alternative path, then well and good. You can go for whether it can be achieved. Your path can be achieved through online courses. Not always is that possible. Online courses applies only for certain subset and maybe the technical subset of the path that you want to choose in life. If it so applies to your path, then you can create a full learning path. What does a full learning path mean? It means that you cover up to what is necessary of the background material that's required for your end goal. So let's say you want to learn about computer networks. To understand computer networks, you might want to have a background in certain areas of mathematics. You want to understand a little bit about computers themselves. Then you want to learn about the computer networks. So you create such learning paths. If your goal is not as specific as I want to learn about computer networks, but it's a much broader goal that I want to learn about computer science as a whole or electrical engineering as a whole, in that case you want to create a learning path of at least 10 to 15 courses that you might be able to cover over a year or 2 years, and that's a good way to go about online learning. So this is one of the reasons that you might want to go for online learning. The second reason is, of course, that you are working in a professional environment and you want to understand a little more about work that your colleagues are doing. This is a fairly good reason to do an online course, and it fits in very well with the stated objective of the degree of learning as well. So here you want to understand as much as you can about the domain from not having the course. You say you don't know much about the domain itself, then you want to know a little bit about which course you want to take up, right? So you want to study a little bit about through online articles about that domain. First understand which area you want to go into in more depth, then choose just one or two courses in that particular domain, and it will so turn out that one course might be sufficient. Sometimes you want to go for two. Don't go into detail. And also in such cases, your goal is not to achieve the highest mark. Your goal may not be to ace a test, and therefore your goal being understanding, then you might want to take courses in the intention of understanding rather than acing the course. In this regard, I would also say that courses from the NPTEL archive are open to you, and these are courses that have been taken in the past but are not offered through certification right now. So these are also open to you. The next reason why you might want to take up a course is that I want to improve my recruitability. Now here you want to basically look at courses that will make you stand out to your recruiter, and that recruiter might be in any domain, but them seeing that you have done courses in that domain just to be more recruitable is going to be very effective for them especially in your interview. Remember that an online certification is not going to help you get the interview, but it will definitely give you enough theory to ace the interview once you get there. It will also perhaps look good on your resume. So you have to basically choose courses relevant to your recruiter of interest. Like list down the list of recruiters that you are applying to, and then list what sort of courses they might require, and those are the courses that you might want to take. Remember that in such scenarios, acing the course exam becomes fairly important because that helps you stand out. Saying that again, I'll take the case of computer networks. If you're going to a company like Cisco and not really from that domain, then you can say that, hey, I've achieved very high marks in computer networks, and this is one of the things that you can show. Or you want to become a network admin, then this is one of the things that you can do. The next reason why you might want to do an online course is that you want to have a long-term goal in life and you're working towards it. Quite often it turns out that if you have a very long-term goal in life, then education will be on that path of the long-term goal. Why is that so? If there is a long-term goal, there is definitely a need for expertise. You have to find your niche and be the expert in that niche, which also means that you have to know more than others in that particular domain. It need not mean know more than everybody in the world. It means that you should know more than peers who are having different niches. You want to be the expert in that particular domain. So there are two challenges here. The first is, what is your goal? Like obviously that is the first thing, right? Once you know that you have a goal, you shouldn't be willing to change it. Once you have a goal, that is your niche. Like you're not 16 anymore that you can't choose. You have, let's say, gone through a bit of life and you are able to choose your goal. Once you do that, you want to acquire expertise. How do you go about acquiring expertise? You attack the problem from all possible angles, right? For example, if you want to become a chip designer, you want to learn physics, you want to learn electronics, you want to learn computer design, everything related to that. You can't just be happy learning about chip design. Same thing that I said with computer networks. You can't just learn computer networks. You have to know the entire gamut of things if you want to be the expert in that field. Of course, if you want to be just like a network administrator, in that case, it might be simpler rather than being an expert in network administration. So these are two different things, and lifelong goal would veer more towards that more expertise rather than getting a job, right? Also important when you talk about lifetime goals, and also in context of technology going on changing, you might say that I want to keep learning. I want to not just be the expert as of today, but I want to be the expert through time. I want to be the expert always. As you advance in your career, you might find younger and younger people learning the latest concepts and coming and telling you. If you are abreast of those, it gives you such an advantage as a manager, as a team leader and things like that. And you also perhaps, especially in technologies which are fast moving, In those, keeping abreast also gives you a good recruitability. So last point that I'll touch upon is that I just love learning, and most of us who take online courses just love learning. It can be I love learning with I want to have recruitability. It can be I love learning with I have a goal. It could be anything, but typically online learners love learning for the sake of learning. It's not towards a goal of acing an exam or passing a certain test. At least for me, it's not like that. If you have the love of learning, you will learn online. And for me, a lot of people fall under that bracket. And for those people, I will just say that everybody can learn everything. There's no restrictions. If you like learning, if you're willing to put in the effort, there's no subject that is not possible for you. Anybody can learn quantum theory, anybody can learn relativity if given the right background, if taken through the right learning path, as in this set of courses to be taken before this particular course is taken. If everyone follows that and if they put in enough hard work, anyone can do anything is my belief. An online system like NPTEL enables you to do that. So on that note, I will close for today. I will just say that I'm very happy with what NPTEL has provided me. It has provided me not just a career, but it has provided me a lot of learning. It has provided me means to stay abreast of current technology. Now, a little bit about myself. I studied in IIT Madras and then IIM Ahmedabad. I have veered more towards data science in the recent past, and the reason I could do that is because of online courses like NPTEL. Data science, of course, was not very popular back when I did my bachelor's, and now is caught on. And that particular phase of learning that I had was mostly online. So if it could help me, it could probably help you as well. With that, I'll close. Thank you.